Well, good evening. And what I'd like to talk to my comrades about tonight in the movement is something that a lot of you would have noticed. It's the world of the anonymous avatar warriors that you seem to get below streams. And this is particularly the case below uh, patriotic alternative streams and the weekly stream that most of us in the movement watch, which is Mark Collette's Patriotic Weekly Review. Now, I've found that I've brushed up against some of these internet warriors in a rather sort of confrontational way. I mean, what I can do, I can read you some of the dialogue that I had. There was one guy who was called Pure Palm, and he said immigration is because of Jewish usury, Jewish exploitation, Jewish wars of aggression, Jewish social engineering. So I replied, I said, so there's no white libtards, no LGBT fanatics, no black Muslim hostile populations. It's all just those 400,000 Jews, is it? If they all left tomorrow for Tel Aviv, would all the millions of white libtards suddenly become based like us? Once those Jews with their magic superpowers had gone? FFS, for fuck's sake, if you're going to say this Jew-obsessive 6 Jews sit round a table with Soros and run the world shite, at least have the guts to show your face and own your words. All this does is make normies run a mile from us. For the record, I don't particularly like Jews, but I'm not obsessed with them either. Yes, they are majority left-wing. There are a few good ones, like Talk Radio's Dr. Savage. Yes, Britain should have stayed neutral in World War II. Yes, anyone more loyal to Israel should live there. And yes, Jews, because of the high Ashkenazi IQ, are slightly overrepresented in places like Parliament, Finance, etc. It is one of many issues. If we remove every libtard from every institution, we solve the JQ to the extent that there is one by default. Why scare off normies, particularly boomers (brackets who vote), and lessen our chance of achieving power by going on about this? I was in the BNP. We had the sense to realise what is sellable and how far we can take the normies. So the reply that I received from this anonymous internet warrior, Pure Palm: your understanding of the problem is naive at best, and you have had to create half a dozen straw man arguments in order to retort to a point I never made. Whatever it is you think you are a part of, I don't want anything to do with ... I mean, it's a little bit confusing, that answer. Rather than just answer my points, he calls them straw man points and refuses to answer them. So I then replied, okay, anonymous coward, cowering behind your online avatar, if you reckon this shite is sellable, next time you're in a pub, cafe, wherever, with your normie friends, or at Christmas dinner with your normie family, come out and say all this in person. You won't, because subconsciously you know if you came out and said all this Jews control the world conspiracy shite in a pub, all those around you would look embarrassed, regard you as a crank, and not wish to associate with you again. Yes, Jews, particularly the left-wing ones, can be criticised. I myself have been called an anti-Semite by lefty Jews for saying, why do you get an ethno-state and white people not? But this conspiratorial nonsense is just an online rabbit hole. Let's take some responsibility for our own people's failures. Even if every single Jew was a lefty fanatic, they could not do shite without millions of white traitors. A good rule of thumb for speaking online, my friend, is don't say anything you would not be proud to own in public to a normie. Right-wing politics is not some online computer game, PA Teenage Avatar Boy. I'm serious about my politics. That's why I will only say things I know I could justify in person. Yes, the white race may be in a better position today if Hitler had won, but that doesn't mean his position or his regime was perfect. You won't ever get a rerun of 1933, son. It's like hoping for a rerun of 1789. Trying to sell this stuff from the 1930s is as much of a waste of time as it would be trying to bring back the Witchfinder General, Matthew Hopkins. The BNP got a lot further than PA has so far. Learn from what we did. Then I get some more abuse back. Cowering coward is redundant retard, and I don't need to sell any idea to anyone who isn't a Zog apologist. Everyone is capable of seeing the true nature of the problem with just a cursory effort. So I then applied to my anonymous avatar friend, Pure Palm, again, and said this: if you can't even sell your ideas to a BNP veteran fascist like me, what chance have you ever got of selling it to a normie? When I say to libtards, I don't like multiculturalism, they don't say, here's 3 reasons why it's good. They tell me, I'm uneducated, I'm ignorant, I'm naive. You use the same tactic, making you just as annoying. You don't say, here's my 3 reasons for this massive world Jew conspiracy. You resort to arrogance, just like a libtard. I can look back on my political involvement with pride. I tried to wake up the normies. I played serious politics. I started in the Tories in 1996. I remember I met Margaret Thatcher in 2005. I met Ian Smith of Rhodesia at a Monday Club dinner. I moved to UKIP. I knew Nigel Farage. I used to deliver his post once a week. I met Taki, the Spectator columnist, at a dinner on HMS Belfast. And I was in the late great Mike Smith's Conservative Democratic Alliance, the Swinton Circle of hard-working Alan Robertson, RIP, Traditional Britain and the BNP. I remember shaking Nick Griffin's hand at the Prince of Wales and saying, we wait for the breakthrough, Nick. Sadly, it never came. I used to get up Sunday mornings at 6, after getting up at 5 all week for work, to deliver BNP leaflets for 2 hours around my town where I live, Biggin Hill, in the weeks before elections. I must have delivered thousands of BNP leaflets in rain, frost, etc. I must have gone to hundreds of political meetings. I sacrificed my police career when my political convictions were discovered via online posts under a false name. But I can look back and reminisce on the numerous good comrades I met in the movement and on the efforts I made. I did all that I could. It's the turn of your generation now. What will you look back and say? I sat online and made comments on and on and on about Jews, under a false name, hiding behind an avatar, scaring normies off. Where do you want to be in 10 years' time, my friend Pure Palm? Still obsessing online about Jews behind an avatar? It's one of many issues we face. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is this massive, dastardly Jew conspiracy running the world. Problem is, my only evidence is you online avatars. Never a whistleblower, never a leaked email, never a recording of Soros telling Biden what to do. Just you anonymous avatars. What are the odds, eh? So there's a little interaction with one of them. It was Pure Palm. But the thing is, he wasn't alone. There's others. And I think another one was John Palmer. And he said to me, PA is not a political party, it's a community building group. Well, why do we need a community building group? I mean, I can go out and find other right-wing people to associate with. I don't need an organisation for that. That's a club. I want to be part of a political party that will change things. Also, my friend, he says, this John Palmer, you clearly know very little about Hitler, World War II or the Holocaust. You're talking absolute nonsense, which is what the beef is. Now, this John Palmer, there is a photo there. I think it's a false photo. I don't think it's a real photo. I've done some looking in on social media platforms and whatever. I think it's a false photo, a false profile, and I don't think John Palmer is his real name. But the thing is, these two guys, this Pure Palm and this John Palmer, who I've met under, in the comment sections under PA streams, they're not alone. There's, I think there was one called, I've taken this from Mark's most recent PA stream, where he talks to oh God, what's it called? Mike Enoch's new party. I forget the name of it, but it's the most recent Patriotic Weekly Review. He's married to Emily. I'm forgetting his name now. But there's another one who's #Oppen10, and he says Holocaust mythology is a historical cut-off point. So again, making everything about one group of people. And there's another one who's called Autist, and his avatar is Hitler tipping his hat. Now, the first thing that strikes you about these people is the sheer arrogance of them. Now, as I said there in my exchange with him, when you say to a middle class liberal, I'm against multiculturalism, I'm against the LGBT agenda, feminism, whatever, particularly when someone with a working class accent from comprehensive school like me says it, what you get, they don't turn around and say to you, here's why multiculturalism is good for you, here's why the LGBT agenda is a good thing, here's why feminism isn't against nature, it actually is good, it works. They don't turn around and say that to you. They say, you disagree with me because you're ignorant, you're naive, you're uneducated, you're not as clever as me. And these guys here, they're doing exactly the same thing. They don't turn around and say to someone like me, oh, here's my 3 reasons for believing in this massive worldwide Jew conspiracy. Here's my 3 reasons for saying the Holocaust was fake and Hitler never was a nice guy and never killed anyone. They turn around, they just say to you, oh, you don't know as much history as me. You're uneducated. And, it's... Now, what I could do, I could turn around and say, well, let's compare A-level results. I got an A and 2 Bs in my A-levels. I mean, I don't like to boast about going to university. I went to Exeter University and got a 2-1 in History Politics BA. But I don't boast about it because, to be honest, I'd rather I never went there. Because I know today, if I had gone out to work when I was 18 years old, I'd probably have more money today than I would have wasting 3 years studying something that has never been of any good to me. And the only job it's ever got me that is school teacher, which I got sacked from by some liberal bitch called Margaret Bamford. So the thing is, going to university never did me any good, so I don't like to boast about it. I don't like to turn around and say to people, oh, I've got an education too, because to be honest, I think once you've done your A-levels, your best, unless you want to be like a doctor or a lawyer, your best bet is to get out there and go to work and get some money around you. But, I mean, I accept, as you get older, you're quite happy to accept that you don't always want to be the number one, the big man. I'm quite happy to accept there are people far more clever than me, there are people far tougher and harder than me, and there are people far better looking than me. It's not a problem for me to accept that. And my IQ, unlike Dutton, I'm prepared to say it. It's whenever I've done it, it's about 108 to 110, 105 to 110. So I'm about the average range. So I accept there's geniuses out there far cleverer than me. But is it really likely that all these geniuses, they're not out there making discoveries or earning millions of pounds? They're behind avatars on the internet going on about the Jews. Is it really likely that all these people behind these avatars going on and on and on about Jews, they're all geniuses? They're all got, because you'd think that someone who was that clever, they might have slightly better things to do. But I accept, by the law of averages, some of these online anonymous avatars may be cleverer than me, and some may be thicker than me. But this tactic that they've got of saying, oh, I'm right about this, and you're just not as clever as me. You just don't know as much history as me. It's really rather pretty pathetic and pretty childish, to be honest. And when you get someone who was a genius, like the late great Enoch Powell, he didn't go around when he spoke to the man in the street saying, I was a professor of ancient Greek at 24. I rose from a private to a brigadier in the army, so I'm your intellectual superior. He went and he spoke to him and he tried to convince them with arguments, because if Enoch Powell had gone up to everyone and said, I'm your intellectual superior, which in truth he probably was with most people, people would have just been turned off and thought, oh, I'm not voting for that idiot. But the reason that Enoch Powell had so much support, and people like dock workers who didn't have his education were fanatically on his side, was because he had that humility. He treated everyone as an equal, and he tried to win them over using arguments. And these guys, these avatar warriors, they're not doing that. You disagree with them, all you get from them is, oh, you don't agree with me because you're not as smart as me. Well, it's possible, but unlikely. Now, the next thing I'd like to move on to is what they're talking about. And what they're talking about is the dreaded JQ. So let's look at this. Now, I'm not a civnat, I'm a proud racial nationalist. And in terms of being a white nationalist, that doesn't mean I say anyone is inferior or superior to me. The races of the world are just different. Humanity adapted to its environment, to its ecology, like every other animal. And these idiots who say all races are the same, they're basically denying evolution. And yes, you can have some outliers in your society, but mass mixing of different groups who have developed differently over millennia, it's impractical, it doesn't work, and it creates tension. I mean, if I'd have had my way, the numbers of of Muslims and blacks in Britain would never have been allowed to exceed 50,000 at the most. So I'm not a civnat like Tommy. If I was given a load of money to make a documentary on grooming victims, I wouldn't take the money and use it making a documentary about an Israeli guy who died of a heart attack. So I'm not Tommy Robinson. So what's these premises of this JQ? Well, the first is that Jewish people tend to be left-wing. Well, again, I can accept that. I can accept that. The majority of Jewish people have left-wing political views. I think that obviously there's going to be the minorities like Dr. Savage, like Disraeli, who was the British Empire Prime Minister, and some of the stuff that he wrote was pretty white nationalist in flavour. So yes, the majority are going to be are left wing for whatever reason, maybe due to the persecution they suffered in the past. But there obviously are exceptions, like the 20-30% like Dr. Savage, who don't go down that road, who are good right-wing based people, who I would be quite happy to accept into our nationalist movement. The next thing regards this JQ is the ethno-state of Israel. Now, I'm quite happy to point out to left-wing Jewish people, indeed, I've been called an anti-Semite for pointing this out, is why do you get an ethno-state, Israel, which has a immigration policy based on race? If you want to immigrate to Israel, you have to take a DNA test to prove Jewish ancestry. And why can't white people have that? So with all these left-wing Jews who support Israel but at the same time want multiculturalism for Europe, I'm quite happy to point out this contradiction, this hypocrisy at the heart of their beliefs. And I've actually been called anti-Semitic by saying this. I think that brainless actress Layla Roos, she put a poster on Twitter of some Jewish woman holding up a poster who was, I assume, some sort of survivor from World War II, saying, oh, there's no such thing as race. I want to see all racial divisions abolished. So I wrote under this, I'll accept the sincerity and the veracity of her beliefs and her sign the day she's prepared to accept 1 million Muslim immigrants into Israel. And Layla Roos accused me of going on about Jews and being an anti-Semite. I was like, well, no, I'm just pointing out, if this Jewish woman with this poster says there's no such thing as race, that's fine. But is she prepared to let 1 million Muslims into Israel if race doesn't exist and we're all the same? So again, I've pointed this out. This is point 2. Right, the third point is being overrepresented in certain fields, like advertising, like finance, even Parliament. I think there's 22 Jewish members of Parliament, which in relation to their numbers, which is about 400,000, is slightly overrepresented. Well, in terms of certain races going into certain professions, again, you can't really say it's some big conspiracy, because this is just the way nature goes. I mean, you could say about Hindus going into corner shops or Chinese people owning restaurants. Certain groups of people will graduate because of nature and their innate characteristics towards certain professions. And if this is the case with Jewish people in terms of finance and advertising, this isn't some massive plot. This is just what Hindus do with corner shops and what Chinese people do with restaurants or with gambling. You know, it's certain people will go towards certain activities, uh, and that's just nature. There's no, doesn't mean there's a big plot behind it. But with this over representation, I mean, as Dr. Dutton says in his books and other scholars have found, the average Ashkenazi IQ is 112. So it's about 12 points higher than the average white IQ. So in terms of elites, because of this high IQ, they're going to be slightly overrepresented. The fourth thing in this JQ thing is about World War II. Well, I'm quite happy to say in public, looking in the camera, I think Britain should have stayed neutral. Before World War II, Britain was a world power. After, it was a bankrupt third-rate nation that couldn't even manage a mundane operation like Suez. Had Britain stayed neutral in World War II, World War One as well, all World War II would have been was a localised war between Germany and Russia because Hitler wanted land in the east. And in such a circumstance, I don't think you would have had the level of atrocities and brutality that you did have, because the Nazi Party couldn't have justified it to their population that we're in this massive life and death world struggle. It would have just been a localised war between Germany and Russia, and a neutral Britain could have even mediated to evacuate people who the Nazis didn't like Jewish populations, out to some part of Africa where the high average Ashkenazi IQ would have aided progress. And the final thing on this is the one beloved of my mate John Palmer, the Avatar King. You know, who expects me to waste my time going looking for a document to prove Hitler didn't kill anyone. Well, the fact is, the Third Reich, it didn't tend to work with a document trail. Hitler would tell people what to do and they would follow the will of the Führer. But the Holocaust, I'm quite happy to say it was 6 million people. It may have been slightly more, it may have been slightly less. People should be able to debate it. I mean, if someone wants to say it was 5 million, fine. If someone wants to say it was 7 million, fine. But putting it in context, it was one of many genocides in history. We had the Holodomor in 1932, where Stalin starved 11 million Ukrainian kulaks. We had the Great Leap Forward, where Mao starved 50 million Chinese to death. So when people start saying about the Holocaust being unique, like, you know, doing a Piers Normie Morgan, then they're almost like saying, oh, dead Jews are more important than dead Russians and dead Chinese. And what Nick should have said when they came out to him on the first question on Question Time is, well, the Holocaust was one of many genocides in history, one of many tragic genocides in history, and, you know, that's all we need to say about it. And you put it to bed by saying that. But when you start going down this route of, oh, there were no gas chambers, Hitler didn't kill a single person, again, you're just scaring normies off, and it's a waste of time. It really is. And now we get to where I part company with my Avatar warrior friends. And it's when they say that everything that's happening in terms of the multicultural society, the white genocide, the LGBT agenda, feminism, Islamic terrorism, all of it, when they say it's Jews behind it all. Now, as I've said to you, I agree. A majority of them are left wing, but this idea that, and again, I've also said they're slightly overrepresented in institutions, and being a majority left wing, they'll be slightly overrepresented as left wingers in these institutions. But when you start saying, oh, they're pulling all the strings, they're controlling everything, it's just internet rabbit hole type stuff. And this is where I really part company with these guys and with Mark. And I mean, Mark did a video, as he always does, on the Christmas adverts and the implicit, disgusting, politically correct messages that we get in these Christmas adverts. And he looked into one of the advertising firms who made these Christmas adverts, and then he goes, "Oh look, they're one of these advertising firms that made these left-wing Christmas adverts. It was begun by a Jew." So then I thought, well, I'll have a look at it. He said this. I'll have a look. I'll investigate. Open mind. So I went and I had a look. And the guy who started this firm, yes, he was Jewish. But the guy died in the 1990s. So how you can hold some poor bastard who died in the 1990s responsible for an advert at Christmas 2021, it's a little bit of a stretch. But I think this is what these avatars and Mark to some extent too do. They sort of they stretch things out massively to fit the facts round their argument. They don't look at the facts and make an argument from that. They sort of stretch the facts out to try and make their argument. And I think what this is a symptom of is in our right-wing movement, in our cause, there's a lot of people who seem to want to simplify things down. And they want to make one big enemy who sits over there. And once we defeat that one big enemy, all the problems are solved. And Alex Jones, he does it. He's got his globalists. And once the globalists defeated, problem solved. We'll have freedom. We'll have, 1776. And my friend Claire Corr, who's obsessed with this bizarre secular Quranist ideology. She's not even from a Muslim background. She's Malay Chinese. But she goes on and on about single unmarried mothers and how they're destroying society. And it's almost like, well, once they're dealt with, once every woman's having a child in wedlock, problem solved, everything done. And then you've got another one is Thomas Baden-Rees, good YouTuber, charismatic, far better YouTuber than me probably, but he goes on and on about the Rothschild family. Well, the Rothschild family, they probably their peak of power was probably about 150, 200 years ago. And then you've got Mark Collette and Ayatollah and his PR avatar gang, and they go on and on about Jews. And once the Jews are defeated, everything's solved. And then you can even go down. You've got David Icke at the real crazy end, and he goes on and on about his lizard people. And once his lizard people are defeated, problem solved. And what I say to all these people is, it's not that simple. Life isn't that simple. There's not one big enemy over there. And once we vanquish that one big enemy, everything's fine. No, there's numerous things that are messing up Britain and the wider European homeland. There's numerous things doing it, and when you go on, I mean, to take on these avatar boys who go on about oh there is this massive uh, Jew conspiracy, and I always say to them, well, where's your proof, lads? Because I mean, suppose there is this massive dastardly Jew conspiracy, and and there's never a leaked email, there's never a whistleblower, there's never a recording of Soros ringing up Biden telling him what to do. All I've got for this massive dastardly Jew conspiracy running the world is anonymous avatars online who for the most part won't show me their face or say who they are. That's my only evidence. So it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? That there's this massive conspiracy, and my only evidence for this massive conspiracy is you avatar guys online who won't even show your face and own your words. So, I mean, this is why I'm sceptical of it. Now, if we look at it in terms of Jewish people, as I've said, it's one of many issues. Yes, a majority of them are left wing. Yes, a majority of them probably are, not helpful for our cause, for our society, our continuation. But it doesn't mean they're all bad, and it doesn't mean that they're behind everything. I mean, that's my view. I mean, you could say the same about LGBT people. I mean, the majority of gay, lesbian people, they're chip on shoulder, annoying, tiresome, attention-seeking narcissists. But it doesn't mean that you don't get the odd good one, like Martin Webster of the National Front, who was a very brave man. I mean, my mate Steve the Decorator, who was in the NF in the 70s, he knew Martin Webster personally, and he said he used to be able to cover it up, except when he was in the pub and he got drunk, and then he'd start saying to guys, "Oh, you're a very handsome boy." They didn't used to like it, all these hard man NF guys straight from a dust up on a march. And Steve said, we used to think it was funny, all the London NF guys, that he couldn't cover it up when he got drunk. But he said there was guys from up north who really didn't like it. But what my mate Steve, he said to me, he said, whatever you say about that man being a puff or whatever, he said he had guts. And in a sense, you got to give him credit for that. That he's, whatever his personal failings, he had guts. He went out there and he tried to save his nation back when it was probably more easy to save the nation and more important to do it. So this is how I view the Jews as the LGBT people. 70-80% of them are tiresome, but you get the odd good one. But if I was to now turn around and say LGBT people are in some massive plot to control the world and they're pulling all the strings, people would think, oh, you're a little bit of a nut, or a little bit of a crank. And this is how you guys are coming across with your fixation on Jews. And if you look at it from a genetic level, they're less of a threat. And Dutton has analysed this, and most Ashkenazis are at least 30-40% white. So if they were to marry a white woman, you're going to have a child who's 60-70% white, who looks totally white. Now, I mean, would you really rather your child married a dark black African and produced a kid like Obama, who's going to look, feel and act black, rather than married a Jew who's probably got 30% white DNA, and then the resulting child doesn't even identify as Jewish. I mean, my approach to any foreign group living within our homeland is always, if it breeds with a white woman, how white will the child be? How white will the child look, feel, and act? Now, I mean, I don't just say this because my brother's married to a Chinese woman, but with Oriental people, because I think it may be slightly closer, you see people who are half Oriental and they look, feel, and act more white than people who tend to be half black. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get the odd guy or lady who is half black who does identify as white, and I'd like to accept those people, because obviously none of us are responsible for what our parents did, but obviously in terms of identifying with a group, the whiter you look, the easier it is to identify as white. I mean, I remember there's a postman, when I was in the post office, a postman I used to work with, Paul Solarco, his brother is the footballer John Solarco, and he said, and I remember this was when Obama became president, and he said to me, Obama's black, and I said, yeah, but Obama's 50% white, and he said, no, Obama's black. I said, all right, as someone half black, how long does it continue? Because he'd had a child with a white woman. I said, is your son black? I said, what does it depend on? And I wasn't being offensive. I was just trying to find out of curiosity. And he said, it mainly depends on what you look like. And this is the truth of what I say. I mean, if you're half black, whatever the reason, you're probably going to look more black than white. So it's harder to identify with the white group. Now, if you're half Oriental or a quarter Indian, you're probably going to look more white. So it's easier. I mean, in the case of Jack Sen, who's a white nationalist who's quarter Indian, it's easier then to identify as white. So I think with any foreign group, this is the approach we need to take. And I mean, you look at, in terms of the Jews, I mean, Field Marshal Milch, who was in Nazi Germany, he was half Jewish, and even the Nazis had to compromise and accept him. You had Count Arco Valley, who was a fanatical German nationalist. Again, he was half Jewish. He was a fanatical fascist and right-winger. And even today, in our own time, we've got Hugh on the offensive. I think he's got a Jewish grandmother. Well, you couldn't get anyone more based. And he's a brilliant warrior for our cause. I mean, he hasn't made many videos lately because I think he's had trouble with his normie job. But you've got to give the guy credit. He's far more talented than me in terms of YouTube videos. And you couldn't get anyone more based who's more of a help to our movement. So if we start purity spiraling, saying, oh, all Jews are the enemy, it's just stupid. And particularly when you start going down the road of, oh, people half Jewish or quarter Jewish. I mean, just to diverge for a moment, in terms of this mixed breeding, miscegenation. I remember when I was in the BNP, I knew this guy. He was a nice guy. He was a manager at Royal Mail, and he had a Chinese wife. And he told this old right winger Barry from the 70s, because he felt he wanted to confess to him and not sort of cover anything up. And this old right winger who'd been back in the day, Barry, he was, I think he was a plumber. He was quite wise. He turned to him and said, "We're not living in a perfect world. And this is the approach we've got to have with this. And I mean, even myself, I've got to be honest. I don't have any attraction for sub-Saharan African women, but I have been out with Latin women, with Colombian, women, with Colombian women who are Latino. I've been out with a mixed race woman as well. But I mean, women always say, "Oh, we get a harder time than the men do." But if you look at race mixing in terms of white men and white women, white men, and you even see this back in slave times, they'll always tend to go for sort of lighter brown women. I mean, this is what I would personally find more attractive. I mean, I would say some half black women are very attractive, but I don't think I've ever seen a fully black woman who I would find, not saying they're not, I'm sure they are to their own men, but I wouldn't find them attractive. Now, the issue is that, you know, yes, I've been out with Latin women, but you get someone like Heidi Klum, and she's gone out with a dark black African like Seal, and she's produced a child that is that looks, feels, and acts far more African than European. Now, I would say to someone like Heidi Klum, you want to shag black men and and uh, and have black children, fine, go and live in Africa. And if she then turned to me and said, well, you want to shag Colombian women and Latin women, go and live in South America, well, I could. See, if you said to me, oh, go and live in Chile, go and live in Colombia, yeah, it might not be as nice as living in Lanzarote, but I know I could be pretty happy there. Whereas if you said to someone like Heidi Klum, or one of these white mudshark type women who like dark black men, oh, go and live in Africa, they'd be horrified. So I put my money where my mouth is with this. So in a sense, this is why women get more of a, I mean, I've diverged here, but this is why women get more of a hard time, white women get more of a hard time than white men. Because if you look right back to colonial times, the white man would always prefer the lighter, some white DNA or Latin light brown woman to the dark black woman, and they'd always be more likely to produce a whiter looking child than a white woman who seems to go, if they do interbreed, they tend to go for very dark black men. But I mean, this is what I have seen. I've got no scientific proof for it or surveys on it, but this is why I would say white women get a harder time on the mixed breeding than white men, because white men who go, these middle-aged saddos who go for a woman in Thailand or whatever, they're more likely to produce a whiter looking child because, light brown than the white woman like Heidi Klum. And as I say, she can say to me, "Oh, you shag Latin women. Well, I'll go and live in Chile or Colombia." Heidi Klum don't want to go and live in Africa. So this is one of the things. Interbreeding with Jews, it's not a threat. It could even diminish the Jewish race to an extent where it didn't hardly exist. Now, part of this phenomenon, obsessing about the Jews, it comes from anonymity online. Now, once upon a time, and me as a 44-year-old middle-aged man can say this, if you wanted to get involved with a right-wing party, you had to put your face out there. you had to go and meet people. Now, I just gonna say about. I mean, I was in the BNP. I started out in the Tory Party in the 90s. I was in UKIP for a bit, the Monday Club, the Conservative Democratic Alliance, Traditional Britain, Swinton Circle. I was in the BNP. I joined in 2003. Then I left because I left politics for a bit in about 2006. Then I joined again about 2008, and then I left again. I think it was about 2014. I left for the last time. But when I joined the BNP, is take note, you little avatar boys. What I had to do, I had to ring up the BNP on a landline. No mobiles, no texting, no emails. This is 2003. And then they were like, right, we're meeting in Croydon Wetherspoons. So I went into Croydon Wetherspoons, and it was like, right, the guy who's in charge of the branch, I won't say his full name, I do remember it, but I won't say it because he was a train driver and I don't want to get him in trouble or lose him his job. I assume he still is a train driver. He's called Bob. He's going to be in a leather jacket at the bar. So I went into Croydon Wetherspoons, and there was about 3 or 4 guys along the bar in leather jackets. And there was me, this naive young ex-Tory boy, and I saw this guy who was bald, and I knew straight away, you're Bob. And I went up, I said, are you Bob? And he's like, yes, I am. And that was it. And I don't know why this is. I can spot another right winger. I mean, before I emigrated, I went to one PA local meet with Cornelius of the South East group. And again, it was a Wetherspoons. It was a Bromley Wetherspoons. And I knew as soon as I saw him, he was the right winger. And funny you say this, certain people, they look right wing. And I remember when I was reading about Anders Behring Breivik, there was one guy who he could have shot, who was one of the few survivors of the massacre, and he didn't shoot him because he looked right wing. Now, and I think this is a skill that most of us in the movement have got, that we can sort of look at people and size people up. And every now and then, if we're meeting up with someone in a bar who's a fellow movement person and we've not met them before, we can straight away see there's the movement guy, because right wingers have got a certain look to them. I don't know why that is or how that is. I mean, it served well for that guy on Ayatollah on Utoya Island that he looked right wing, because Behring Breivik didn't shoot him. So there you go. But this is how I joined back in the day. You had to go out there, you had to show your face, you had to go up to someone in a pub. This is me. Hello, this is what I believe. And then the next weekend, you had to be out leafleting with them, meeting members of the public, showing your face to non-movement people. This is me, this is what I believe. And occasionally you have someone screw up the leaflet or call you a racist or whatever. I remember once, you like this story, I was leafleting this street, and as I went up this street with these BNP leaflets, I had some estate agent guys come down past me with these estate agent leaflets. Now, then I suddenly heard this shout behind me, hello, hello, hello. And I let it continue for a bit. Now I turned round, and it was this fat middle-aged woman, white woman of course, and she said, did you put a BNP leaflet through my door? And I thought I could just tell her and take it back, but I thought no, that's too easy. And then so what I said, no, I'm the estate agent leafleter. They went down there. So then she'd seen the other leafleters go down. So she was quite overweight as well. So I let her run down, and, and she went running after these estate agent leafleters, and and then she never came up, never came back up. I thought about 10 minutes, half hour, she's going to come up again. But I suppose she realised that she'd been tricked. But I thought, well, get her a bit of exercise. But no, I had other people screw the leaflets up. I don't want your racist nonsense, all this old shit. But again, I didn't care, to be honest. It's they're brainwashed. What are you going to do? Now, part part of the thing is character building. Going out there, having some people reject you for your political views, it is character building. And bizarrely, you will find that some people who you would think would be very opposed to you actually have more respect for you if you're open. Now, here's a little anecdote. When I was a prison officer for a year from 2014 to 2015 in HMP Feltham, there was this lad called Les who I was quite friendly with. I think he wanted to go in the military, but sadly, because he'd been in prison, I doubt he could. So he used to want to go in the Foreign Legion. So I remember one evening I was sat on evening association. Les was sat next to me there, and there was this other bloke on the wing, Raymond, who was a black guy, and he stabbed someone twice in a fight over a girl. And as black guys who've stabbed someone in a silly fight go, he was quite all right. He was, friendly enough, likeable enough guy. Now, I remember Les, because he was wanting to be in the military, he seemed fairly based. And I remember he was sat there, and Raymond came up to him, and he was talking to him on association. And Raymond, this black kid, he said to Les, he said, I don't care if you're a racist, as long as you own it. And this is the thing. Here's this black fanatic, Raymond, and he was cleverer than you'd think for someone who was in jail for stabbing someone with no education. I remember him saying to me once about, the slave owners got compensation when they freed the slaves. So he was turned on, he knew his stuff. And there you have it. There's a black nationalist. He's saying to someone, I kept silent because obviously I was at work. I'm not going to talk politics. I'm not going to involve myself in political discussions. But there was Raymond saying to Les, I don't care if you're racist, as long as you own it. Because I think what annoys black people is hypocrites who say one thing to your face and then another thing behind your back. Well, I'll be friendly and polite to anyone who's friendly and polite to me. But anyone asks me what my views are, I'll say to them to the face, I'm a white nationalist. And I don't think multicultural societies work. And I don't think there should be more than 50,000 black or Muslim people in Britain. Those are my views. I'm proud of them. And I don't think gays should be adopting children or having propaganda in schools, and they should be discreet. And I think women and men are suited for different roles in life. And people want to dislike me for that, fine, I don't care. But there's a story that if you're not some anonymous cuck hiding away behind an avatar online, you actually get more respect. Now, obviously, this stream's about avatars. One of the avatars below last week's PWR stream was Warren Baylog. That's who it was with, I think. Blood of Tyrants. He said here, anonymity serves as a pressure valve. True, true. And then this other anonymous avatar said, it was called @Facts, said, that's the great thing about the internet, no consequences. Whereas I'll say to you later, there are consequences. Now, of all the comments below last week's Patriotic Weekly Review stream, guess which one got deleted by Mark? Yeah, that's it. My one, where I debated and doubted the Jew question. So you've got all these people, including people saying, oh, David Icke's right and there are lizard people, all these various comments. And the one Mark deletes is my one saying maybe there's not a massive world Jew conspiracy. Now, if we can't have freedom of speech below a bloody PA stream, where can we? Now, I mean, I've got a lot of respect for Mark. He's done a lot. Whatever his views on this, he puts his face out there. He's done a lot. He's sacrificed a lot, and the same with lovely Laura too. But this is part of the problem with these JQ obsessives. They go down this internet rabbit hole, and if you doubt their viewpoint, you're either A, thick, and B, they don't want to talk to you, and they'll delete your comment. And this is part of the thing. And I mean, fair enough to Mark, he puts his face out there, so he takes the social consequence of it. But these anonymous kids who are talking behind avatars, as this Blood of Tyrant says, it's a pressure valve. All they're talking away behind avatars, online anonymously. A lot of them into video games, because Mark likes video games, so they seem to think that right-wing politics is like just another video game. And politics for me isn't a video game, it's a serious life or death, future of the nation issue. And this is the thing, that there's, because they're not showing their face, they don't have to own their words, they don't have to take any consequence for their words. Now, obviously, the environment we live in, it's not always easy with our political views to be open about being a nationalist. But I say this clearly, the only reason you should be staying anonymous on the internet is for work. There should be no other reason. And in terms of family and friends, there should be no other reason. And I mean, there's a few people around here who won't speak to me. I had people who I used to work with disown me, block me on Instagram. I've had people who were friends disown me, block me. The only reason you should be anonymous is because of work, because you need to keep a job. And I mean, I'm a little suspicious of the Ayatollah for this, because I've heard him say once that his in-laws don't know what his views are. Well, I think, well, if you're not, got enough balls to say, I mean, I like his stream, he's charismatic, he's amusing, does good impressions, but if you're not got the conviction to speak up to your own family, your own kith and kin about your views, that there's a little bit of a problem there in terms of being a leading figure in the movement. And this is, I mean, I've got a cousin called Abigail who's a hippie waster piece of shit, and she won't speak to me, and I say good. And everyone should say the same. And Ayatollah, I know he's got a girlfriend who's half Indian. Well, I mean, I'd assume her parents know that she's fairly right-wing, and he should just have the guts to say, look, I'm a nationalist. And your daughter may be mixed race, but she associates with nationalism as well. Because as Mike Enoch said, the problem with this, you're living two lives, you get found out. And it's diminishing returns. It's like going to a casino. Eventually you will lose. I mean, I found this myself. I was a police officer in Westminster from 2015 to 2020, and I thought I could have this other secret life outside work. And if I avoided socialising or really getting to know work colleagues, I could have this secret life where I was a right-winger online, outside work, in my own time, under a false name. Well, someone found me. And this is what happens. But if you've got the conviction that you've not said anything online, that you can't look people in the face in public out there and justify, you've got nothing to fear from doxing. I mean, as Nick Griffin says, in a serious political party, people dox themselves. Because, we're not going to win this thing sitting online behind avatars. We're only going to win this thing if we can go out there on the street and say, this is what we believe and we're not ashamed of it. And only then will we be able to persuade others. And part of the thing is, as I said, I'm quoting the avatars here, facts. That's the great thing about the internet. There are no consequences. But the fact is, there are consequences. And there's serious consequences for the movement. I mean, why do you think on Question Time in 2009, part of it's Nick's fault because he wasn't properly prepared when he should have been. As Mark said, that was his one big chance and he messed it up. And it's one of the things that led to the failure of the BNP. Why do you think the first thing they came out with was the Holocaust denial JQ stuff? It was because they knew that's the thing that scares off the normies. And rather than say, oh, something normie friendly like, yes, Hitler killed 6 million, but Stalin killed and left-wing regimes killed far more. He starts on about stuff that in our circles, that anonymous avatar type stuff, radio messages in Eastern Europe from British intelligence, the sort of stuff that we like talking about in our forums, but stuff that's going to normies not have a clue about, and they just seized on it. As my mate Steve said, Steve the decorator, he said he couldn't even get out the starting gate. He said they were on him straight away with this. And what he should have done was just batted it away and said, look, history is history. History is for the historians. And if you look further back, again, it's this Nazi LARPing, JQ obsessing has had other consequences. You look at John Tyndall. Now, 1979, he and many in the NF leadership expected a breakthrough. And why did this breakthrough not come? Because the Liberal elite, they had these photos of John Tyndall in his plain dress up, these cartoonish photos of John Tyndall in a Nazi uniform. And obviously the mainstream media kept putting those out there again and again and again. And so you had, veterans who'd fought in World War II, who didn't like all these coloured immigrants coming into Britain, people who were conservative based. And Margaret Thatcher was able to win them over by saying, oh, I'm going to prevent swamping. And a lot of these people, probably millions of them, thought like this. Oh, I don't like all the coloured immigration, the changes that happen to Britain's demographics, but I fought in the war against the Nazis, so I don't want to vote for someone who wore a Nazi uniform. So those cartoonish photos, they just did away all John Tyndall's talent as a good speaker, as a charismatic leader, as a clever man, was all just blown away by this Nazi LARPing. So all this Nazi LARPing anonymously, it does have a cost. There is a price to be paid. And in terms of the dispatches, expose, I wonder, like, they went to the camp where people were talking, all they had was a few people in the camp saying silly things at night around a campfire in 2 years of filming. And an Antifa punch-up where the violence came from the left. Well, the journalists probably tipped them off. Amusing as it was to see this left-wing journalist. I'm a journalist, don't beat me up, don't beat me up. But amusing as that was, I mean, all this Cotton bloke had to do to discredit PA was go below one of the streams and look at the comments, because you got all these kids making all these comments like they're in a computer game, comments that they wouldn't dare be able to say in public, or they wouldn't be able to justify in public. And I mean, this is the thing. I think if you don't make a comment online that you couldn't go out there on the street and look in someone's face and say, I believe this, this is my reasons why, A, B, and C, and I'm proud of it. And I think for all of us in the movement, we're undermining ourselves if we make comments that we can't apply that standard to. Now, the final reason this happens is, I mean, I think a final reason for this is that the situation young people are in today. And you look at what the boomers had. They had job opportunities, job security, a chance to have a home, a chance to raise a family. And so, because they had all this security, they could afford to ignore race. You know, resources were aplenty, and they could pretend race was a side issue. And here's another quote from an avatar. I'm not going to quote books this stream. I'll quote the avatars, because you go through them occasionally, you get some quite profound stuff. And there was avatar at Reed Johnson said, boomers have afforded themselves the luxury of not identifying with their own people. And here in Lanzarote, you see the boomers come on the cruise ships, and they come for the day, the retired normally boomers, and sometimes I chat to them in CAFs, and you very much get the impression that they want to pretend that it's 1990 or 1985, and the only black guy is your pretty woman chauffeur, your friendly black pretty woman chauffeur, and the only Pakistani guy is not your grooming gang, but your friendly corner shop owner, and they want to pretend it's a tiny side issue. And we got to remember, as late as 1991, Britain was 94% white, as late as the 1991 census. And the boomers, they had all these opportunities. And these youngsters today, they've got nothing. They've got no long-term job security. They've got no chance of home ownership. They've got positive discrimination working against them. They've got no free speech at work, you know, in their school, in their college. So they go online and they go to the furthest extreme, because that's the one place they get where they're so frustrated they can go off the deep end, and they really do go off the deep end. And because they have this one release valve, like this guy said, the one pressure valve, they get online behind their false avatar and they go overboard. And it's all because they've been denied all the things that the boomers got: the job security, the job prospects, the home ownership. And just to give some examples, I mean, I listened to an interview with John Simpson, the BBC reporter, and he, when he left university, he applied for the BBC and 2 newspapers. All 3 offered him a job, and he had his pick. And I mean, this guy wasn't a boomer. He's a good friend of mine, John Carr. Lovely old guy, and I knew him because I was mates with his grandson, and I used to go around his house and see him, and we got on so well. I ended up used to going round there whenever, even when his grandson weren't there. And he was a real hero, a real great man, and he was on the Arctic convoys. He was a Scotsman, and on the 13th of January 1942, his ship was torpedoed and he was the 13th and last man out the water to survive on a ship of about 170, 150 people. 13 men came out the water, and he was number 13 on the 13th of January 1942. So when he left the Navy in 1946, he applied for 3 police forces: Aberdeen, Dundee and the Met Police in London. All 3 offered him a job. And you get kids now, and they'll wait years to get in the police. I mean, I remember I was in the prison service, and to get in the police, I had to do this course on a Sunday, which was like a mini A-level. It was called the Certificate of Knowledge Policing. I had to do this on a Sunday, and I had to pay about £600-700. No, I think it was about £300-400 to do this course, and the police didn't pay for that. You had to pay for it, and that everyone did it, and you had so Sundays in the prison service, because prison officers work every second weekend, couldn't get them all off, so you had to go sick a few of them, because you were doing this other A-level on a Sunday just to get a job in the police. And then my mate John gets out the Navy in 1946, fills in 1 form, and 3 police forces offer him a job. And this is how it is. And even when you look at like office type jobs, I mean, my late mum, bless her, she was really good at shorthand and typing. She used to go in the 60s and 70s for 3 different jobs. They'd all offer her a job. And these youngsters today, they've got none of this. And then you know, they sit at home in their parents' bedroom into their 20s, their parents' spare bedroom, and they're online, they're playing computer games, they're frustrated, and then right-wing politics becomes like another computer game for them. And one of the things that really struck me about the lack of opportunity for young people today is you look at that London terror attack, where you had that guy who murdered Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones, and by that Muslim scumbag, and he should have been deported after his sentence, because a gym I used to go to, I knew a prison officer who from the gym I used to talk to, who guarded that Muslim terrorist. And he said from the day he entered to the day he released, he was a total objectionable, anti-British whatever. And they let him out. I mean, in any sane world, he'd have finished his sentence and been deported. But the London terror attack in the Fishmongers' Hall, there was obviously Jack Merritt, who was murdered, who was a Liberal. And then after he was murdered, his own father, and this is the sad extent to which people have been brainwashed, said, "Oh, I don't want Jack, anyone right-wing to refer to Jack's murder." I mean, your own son is killed by multiculturalism, and you won't even criticise multiculturalism. This shows how deep the brainwashing has gone. And the other one who was murdered in this London terror attack on London Bridge in 2019 was Saskia Jones, 23, and she was an Oxford graduate. And the thing that really struck me about this, she wanted a career, I assume, in the prison service or the probation service, and she was an Oxford graduate, so she went along to this day where they had prisoners at Fishmongers' Hall, you know, interacting with students, and she wasn't even getting paid. And this poor girl, Saskia Jones, got stabbed at an event, and because of the way Britain is today, the bloody probation service, they weren't even paying her. She was there for bloody work experience. So you're there associating with prisoners who, you know, occasionally can turn violent and threatening, and you're not even getting paid. And that basically says it all. This poor girl ends up getting murdered by a terrorist at an event she's not even getting paid to attend because there's so few opportunities for young people in Britain today. And that is basic, that's outrageous. And this is why these youngsters, they're online. A lot of them play these computer games, and then they go online and they hide behind an avatar and they say the most extreme thing possible. And it's not the way, lads. It's not the way. You know, the way is to go out there on the street and sell nationalism. Now, as I said to you, I was involved when I lived in England. I did all I could. I mean, I got up, I went out, I delivered BNP leaflets, I went to meetings, hundreds of meetings, thousands of leaflets. I did all I could to wake the normies up. So I can look back, like I said in that email, on my political involvement with pride. I tried my best to wake the normies up. I tried my best to save my nation. And, I mean, obviously I'm a foreigner here. But I try and make a small contribution. I can't take a leading role because I'm not Spanish. I mean, I'm a member of the Vox Party. You see there. And when they do a meeting on the seafront against immigration, I'll go along and have my banner and my flag, my Spanish flag. So I try and contribute all I can. But I mean, I say to these avatar lads, you know, yes, there is a JQ to some extent, but if going on and on about this scares normies off, it's counterproductive. And if we ever get in power, we hopefully can go through every institution, we can go through education, we can go through the NHS, we can go through the police, we can go through the civil service and remove every liberal. And the extent to which there is a JQ, we solve it by default. So why talk about the JQ and make that day when we can go through and solve all the left-wing scum in the institutions, when we can solve it, why make that day less likely to occur? And I say to these lads, I say, yeah, it's no good slagging off anyone who disagrees with you online. You've got to have arguments that you're prepared to back and forth with. You've got to be able to go out there and say and show your face and be able to say, this is what I believe, here, let me sell it to you. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm 44 years old now. I tried my best. I now live abroad. In terms of jobs, I've done all I want to do. You know, I've served as a police officer. I've achieved career-wise. I own property, which I rent out now. So I've done all I want to do. I'm not interested in doing anything more. I'm only interested in going back to Britain to live if Mark Collett is Prime Minister and with Laura Towler as his deputy. So, you know, all I can do is say that, you know, purity spiraling online, it's all very good, but it's a whole different ball game when you have to show your face. And even if we get to this, you know, I mean, when that other bloke, John Palmer, says to me, PA is not a political party, it's a community building group. Well, we don't need a party then to associate with other right-wingers. And even if a political solution is no longer possible, as Nick Griffin says, even if it comes to a civil war type scenario, you still need to be able to win more people over to your side than the other side can in order to win. So if you can't do that because you're purity spiraling or you're obsessing on one small issue, which is one of many, you're still going to lose. Whether it's civil war, whether it's an election, whatever. So all I say to you, the avatar boys below the streams, don't say anything you wouldn't be prepared to sell in public. Don't say anything you wouldn't be proud to say in public. And don't say anything that you know you couldn't sell in public. So let's have some discipline online. You know, let's end the purity spiraling. Yes, some people need to stay anonymous for their jobs, but you know, let's not go off the deep end and say stuff that we know we could never sell, because at the end of the day, it's counterproductive and it is used against us. I thank you for your time. This has taken longer than I meant it to take, but there you go. Thank you for your time.